everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. I'm back looking at the Complete Eightball, but now I'm looking at issue number 9. We're going one issue at a time. On the last video, I made note of this little number 9 over his very small genitals there, and I enjoyed that. I thought that was funny. Right before I recorded this, a day or two before this was recorded, I posted my review of issue number 4 from this, and at that point, I think up through issue 8, really, I was being pretty negative about the series, and a couple people have commented like, bro, if you don't like it this much, like, you know, it's okay to post a negative review, but maybe for your own sake, just quit doing this because you seem pretty miserable about it. But there's a couple reasons I'm continuing to go. One is I really want to reread Ghost World and see it in its original context. And B, like, you know, like, we're halfway through and there's some development still as an artist, and I'm curious to track that. And so, like, if I wind up, you know, not liking the first half of the book or whatever, or not liking all the book, that's fine. But it's curious to track. And this issue number 9, I'm starting to see a shift, at least for this issue. I don't know, but that's why this is interesting to me to keep going, even though if a lot of it irritates me. So here we have the inside front cover. You have this strip ink studs, which is pretty typical Clowes, like kind of making, I don't know, like trying to show that comics are better than they were, but still just being a total comic nerd. That the kind of self-canceling thing that drives me crazy about what I've read so far. So here he's saying, like, you know, trying to basically say why chicks should like cartoonists. It's kind of funny because I think this is actually, you know, over the last 10 to 20 years, like, nerd culture has become more part of pop culture, and so I don't think we're as much outcasts as poor Mr. Clowes must have felt, but he really seems to be fighting against that here. But you're not doing, and he knows it. He's being funny. He knows he's not doing himself any favors in terms of not looking like a dork or perv by having his little cummy brush there. So whatever. I mean, everything he's doing in here so far is like ironic. He knows it's a bad idea and he's doing it anyways, and he thinks that's funny. That's just not my thing. But I think in here we start to get some more genuine stuff. Like a Velvet Glove, Cast in Iron, I don't know. I don't have anything new to say about that one than what I've already said. That story, I'll be happy when it's replaced. Some more ads, which I think are funny, and just the fact that he'll stick in like little cartoons and stuff is makes these more interesting. But it's also interesting to track, like, okay, this is turning into a business. He needs to make some money now, so you can be as underground and anti-corporate as you want, but you got to make some money. This is funny. Wanted more readers like this. I just like these things. I don't know. I see Brian Payne here. I don't know if this is my friend Brian Payne, who now lives in Alaska. But Brian, if you see this and if that's you, I hope you've got your teeth fixed, because everybody in 8-Ball apparently has worse teeth than Brian Payne. So I don't know that, but I didn't notice any other famous names. It's fun to see the famous names in those. Then there's just a little 6-panel strip called Fuckface, which is, I don't know, kind of Ivan Brunetti-esque. I've never liked Brunetti because he just goes, he's a great cartoonist, but the content just is too gross for me. That kind of feels like this. Then we return to Dan Pussy, The Artist's Life. This one actually is quite touching to me. I like this story quite a bit because what it's about, and maybe this is extra relevant right now because I am recording this like in the day after everyone started posting these little no AI images and everyone's freaking out about copyright and AI stealing style. And here we've got, you know, an earlier instantiation of art thievery, which is normal in the art world and has been for a long time. And so it's interesting to see a bunch of artists who are all thieves. We're all thieves. We're all style thieves. We've all got influence, freaking out about copyright all of a sudden. And I worry a bit that we're going to do some retroactive damage in trying to preserve our art from being taken over by the AI. We're going to ask for some copyright laws that are then going to retroactively make a bunch of people's art practices, mine included, like almost entirely illegal. So that's kind of scary. But this story deals with appropriation, reappropriation, as it's called in the art world, and recontextualization, and the problems of that. So, and the hypocrisies of it as well. So here you have Dan Pussy, and he's like, oh, you know, every artist hones their skills by copying master drawings, and so here he is copying a drawing, swiping a drawing out of a comic, and he's like, oh, if I change his arm, it's not a swipe, no big deal. And then he gets a call from a famous painter who he's never heard of, who's highly influenced by his style, and invites him to his show. And he goes to his gallery show and is seeing basically his art on the wall. So you've got a Roy Lichtenstein situation here where a guy's straight up just copying comic panels big as paintings, and they're being sold. And he's in the gallery, and he hears the gallerist come up and tell the artist, hey, the $2,500 one and the $3,750 one have sold. Congratulations. And he's thinking, holy shit, like almost $4,000. Like, I'm not getting that for my pages. A more potent version of this came out later with John Severn. It's a one-page story where John Severn's talking about Roy Lichtenstein stealing one of his war panels and changing it and selling it for millions of dollars, and that he never saw any of that, and the most he got was like a bottle of wine. So there have been a lot of gross abuses of pop culture in the fine art world where things have been appropriated and recontextualized, but that's all perfectly legal. And we want it to stay legal because people are able to make statements. There are people like Lichtenstein that I don't think did it in a very interesting way, but I don't think you want to erase Lichtenstein out of the art history books because he retroactively broke some copyright laws because of AI or something. So this story shows the very real impact of appropriation and how one person can financially benefit from someone else's work while the person who's not benefiting is still struggling. And that's a very real problem in the art world. But AI, it's not new. AI didn't bring this to the table. And style itself should not be copyrightable. So all these people freaking out about copying styles, I don't know. It's like Dan Clowes is, I've said it before, it seems like a mix of Gilbert Hernandez and Charles Burns. To me, those seem to be the primary two influences. I'm sure there's a lot of other people. I mean, I look at like Jim Rugg's art, and it's obviously massively inspired by Daniel Clowes. So, we can't, like, style, you just can't do it. But this story is very heartfelt. And again, it's comic artists talking about the problems of comic artists, which in 2022 is not so interesting, but in the 90s, I could see why that was really impactful. Zubrick and Pogibait, this is another, like, angsty Dan Clowes, like, just wanted to escape from the world. But again, this one I can really, like, relate to, like, 2022, walking outside of my house always just seems like I'm dealing with crazy people, and there's shootings going on all over, and everyone's insane and wants crazy things. And so he's talking about, maybe I'll just hole up in my apartment, and that temptation has been very real. I think for probably all of us over the last couple years, everyone I know is talking about, I just want some property. So, like, I feel it, I feel that. And then he undermines it by showing that even what's going on within your own house could be unsettling, and that's not a great answer. So I like it better when Clowes is starting to undermine himself, not just in an ironic way, but to make some kind of healthier point about the world. And I feel like in this issue, he switched. We've hit the halfway point. Well, I guess the halfway point of this book. I know there's a couple more issues out there other than what's collected in the book, but there seems to be a shift. I'll be curious to see if that continues into the later issues, or if he just reverts back. But it feels like growing up a little bit in this story. And then this 8-Ball, this really, to me, does suggest that this is like an intentional halfway point of a sort, where you have Dan Clowes drawing himself. He's looking at an 8-Ball, and it's like Superman's little city that he has shrunken in a bell jar. And so he shrinks himself down with a shrink ray, which is very Superman, and goes into the world of the 8-Ball and meets all of his own creations. So you have Dan Pussy, you have, I don't know who these characters are, they're familiar to me though. You have Lloyd Llewellyn, who's looking less stylized, which is interesting, and and this is all happening within the Velvet Glove set. So you've got a lot of interesting, like, artists interacting with his characters. It's not like a new trick by any means, but it's always a fun one. Some people do it better, some people do it worse. This is a pretty good instance of it. But what I really like about this is the characters are going on about, like, this existential nihilistic view. It's an endless, meaningless cycle of fear and pain. And then at the end, Clowes actually gives, like, this speech that's, like, encouraging about there's beautiful art and music and a small handful of like-minded individuals with whom you can share your time. Those who have a black sense of humor and are never at a loss for amusement. There's work to be done, history to be made, petty ego triumphs to be had. And what's more, love does exist, and indeed it's a beautiful thing. And that's like a really uplifting note, you know. And I still think there's a sense of irony and sarcasm underneath it, but I do feel like the stories are getting less nasty. I feel less like I'm looking at the nasty part of myself. Or when I do look at the nasty part of myself, it's not encouraged so much as shifted. The view on it is shifted. And so I find this issue much more compelling. I hope that I've got half of this book left to go. I've read the first 9 issues, so now I've got the last 9 to go, and I'm really looking forward to where it's going to go. And I know that within a couple issues we're going to start getting Ghost World as well, which I'm really looking forward to that, because I do remember enjoying Ghost World, and I'll be curious to see how that holds up. Yeah, I'm a couple issues away, but I'm curious to see how that holds up. Coming back to it years and years and years later. So thanks for following along with this. I hope you'll join me for checking out issue 9. And for those of you who have stuck through 8 issues of me grouching about Dan Clowes grouching, I really appreciate it. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel, the best ways to support us are through our Patreon. There's a couple different tiers of interaction, engagement, and exclusive content that you can get through there. All the money we get from there goes back into buying the books that we review, so we really appreciate that. And the best way to support the channel is to support the books that Sean has put out through Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at a couple of those now. The Exile by Eric Creek is a gorgeously illustrated Viking saga of revenge. Eric Creek calls it his Viking Western. It's about a guy who's been away on the warpath and is returning home to some family troubles that have to be resolved. And this is told in just this amazing, like, kind of 3-color art style that looks like old woodblock cuts or something. It's absolutely gorgeous book that you've got to pick up. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
What's your